Hey folks, Will here again with Happily Ever Outdoors. So in this video, we're going to talk about our top 5 adventures. So keep watching. Alright guys, so if you follow a lot of outdoor YouTube channels, especially the smaller ones, you'll notice there's a lot of tag videos going around. Like top 5 backpacking gear, top 5 survival gear, things like that. So basically the idea is that you do the video and then you tag usually 5 other people to do the same video. Well, our good friend Vandy over at Vandy's Call to Adventures had a really neat idea. Rather than doing a video just about gear, he came up with a top 5 adventure video. So I'll go ahead and link to his original video where he shares basically the top 5 adventures of his life. And when you get down to it, that's what it's really all about, right? I mean, we definitely talk a lot about gear, a lot about tips and tricks on our channel, all that good stuff, and that's part of it. That's part of what enables you to get out there. But when it comes down to it, that's really what it's all about, right? It's about those adventures, those memories that you get to take with you for the rest of your life, and hopefully get to share with your friends and your family, those you love. So real quick, we're going to share with you our top 5 adventures. We'll go from the bottom, so the bottom 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, up to our very top adventure. And then, especially if you're a small outdoor content creator, you might want to watch to the very end because we are going to tag 5 of our friends and associates within the outdoor YouTube arena to go ahead and do the same video. So starting with number 5, I would have to say that would be moving across the country. Definitely, that was a big adventure, and we've actually done that 3 times thanks to the Army. Now, my wife and I, we were both born and raised in the state of Washington. That's really all we knew until our young adulthood. I went into the Army, I was called to active duty, and that took us down to Fort Benning, Georgia. And we actually did a year there, went back home, and then about 9 months later I was mobilized again, so we made the exact same road trip back all the way across the country. I mean, and if you look at a US map, it's about as far as you can go corner to corner without going into, say, Florida. But in some ways I think that really helped to kind of put that spirit of adventure in us, because we were so used to what was comfortable, what was the norm, and that just took us totally out of it. I mean, complete cultural shock, completely different climate, everything unfamiliar, brand new. But I think because of that, we really got more confidence to get out, to explore, to go new places, to do new things, to meet new people. It kind of took that fear and that mystique away from it, I guess. Don't get me wrong, I love the small town life I grew up with, and I still love it. Hopefully I'll get back there one day, but I definitely do not regret making that move and getting out of our comfort zone and basically seeing what our country has to offer. For number 4, I think I would have to say that would be having the opportunity to visit Puerto Rico. Now, of course, I just have to say right now that my heart and my prayers go out to the people of Puerto Rico. I know they are still dealing with all of the devastation and destruction and everything that happened down there. So I hope all the recovery efforts go well, and I'm sure you guys will be back on your feet before you know it. But I was actually able to visit a number of years ago for a military function. I was going down there with a chaplain, helping to escort them to go visit the units down there. And I was able to be there for about a week. And that's really, outside of going to Mexico, I think, for like a day as a kid when we went to go on vacation in California, I had never been outside the country. So it was brand new to me, just a completely different culture. I was the assigned driver for the trip. So I'm driving the rental car with this older chaplain in there. And the whole time he's just holding onto that handle, you know, just terrified because people do not drive the speed limit in Puerto Rico at all. I mean, people were going 30, 40 miles an hour over the speed limit, blowing through stop signs. And I learned real quick that if you're going to survive down here, and that's what I told the chaplain, you know, he was telling me to slow down and, you know, what are you doing? I said, sir, if you want to make it out of here alive, we've got to keep up with the flow of traffic here. It's just definitely different. It's just crazy. I also remember going up through some of the mountain passes, and you'd be driving on these, you know, one lane, basically dirt, gravel-ish roads, and you would just have the cliff going up on this side and the cliff going down on this side into the jungle. and there would be chickens and dogs flying out and running out into the middle of the road. And I remember coming up around this one sharp corner, and this 18-wheeler is coming down the mountain the other way, and we're shoved basically all the way over to the outside edge. You know, my chaplain is looking over the side down into the jungle, and this 18-wheeler is just squeezing right by us, right up against the wall. I mean, like it was nothing to him, you know, like that was just an everyday thing. So, but a beautiful country. Just the jungles are beautiful, just lively, you know, just nice, friendly people, just colorful, just a really great place to visit. For number 3, I think I would have to say visiting the island of Kauai, Hawaii. Now, this was a couple years ago. Me and my wife were able to go, I guess 2015? Yeah, 2015. I had been to Oahu, Hawaii as a teenager, had went with my family, so I already kind of got a feel for the islands. I really loved it, beautiful place, and my wife had never been, so I had the opportunity to kind of take her. We got to go to a different island, and if you've never been to Hawaii, I'm telling you, especially if you're a resident of the United States, you got to get over there. It's just a beautiful, amazing place. Now, one of the real standouts to me, you know, on Kauai, there's basically one side of the island that's all mountains with cliffs that basically just drop off into the ocean, and there's jungles and stuff over there, and there's a park. I can't remember the name of the park we went to, and there was one specific trail. I want to say it was like Awa Pui, something like that. It has like 15 A's in the name. But you're able to go out on that trail, and normally it would be like a loop, and there'd be a section of it that would kind of go along the cliff, along the seashore, but that section was washed out at the time because of a storm, I guess, heavy rainfall, so you were only able to hike out and back, but it would take you out to the cliffs on the one side of the island, and you get out there, and it must have been, I don't know, I guess a couple 1,000-foot drop, and you know, the cliffs are kind of curving around like this, and it's just drop off over here, and you're just looking out straight into the ocean. And what was so cool about it is at first I thought it was like maybe fog on the horizon or something, but I realized basically it was just that it was literally as far as my eyes could see. You know, it got to a point where your eyes could not see any further, and it just like faded out, just looking into the vastness of the ocean. Now basically at the end of this trail there's this like huge kind of outcropping that sticks out that must have been, I don't know, like 80 or 100 feet wide, something like that. So you could kind of walk out, and again you could kind of you know, see the cliffs down this way and cliffs down this way, but plenty of space to walk. But apparently, in my wife's mind, I mean, I guess she saw it as like 10 feet, 5 foot wide. And so I'm walking out there, and she's just freaking out, just screaming, "What are you doing? Get back from there!" You know, and I'm like, "It's fine, it's fine." And she's, "No, you're gonna trip and fall and die." And I was like, "Honey, I could run full speed and trip head over heels, and I would not even go over the edge." You know, and she got so upset with me that she ends up walking back up the trail like she wouldn't even look. So I didn't go too far out. Now it went way out, and I think maybe she was worried because it went way out and got really narrow, you know, that I was gonna go way out there, even though there's all kinds of signs saying not to do it, but you know, people still do it. It's the pictures you see on Instagram, right, where people are sitting on the edge of a cliff, you know, 2 seconds away from oblivion. But I'm not dumb, I'm not gonna try anything like that. So I stopped, and for me, I just, you know, kind of paused, and it was just one of those really impactful moments for me, because there was something about that. You know, for me, I'm a Christian, you know, and I believe in a creator God, and that's part of what I love about getting out in nature, is it gives me a feeling of like closeness to him and a little more of an understanding of, you know, kind of, I guess, the way he thinks, and you know, just by seeing what he's created, and that's how I feel about it. So when I was sitting out there and looking out at the ocean and just realizing, you know, the vastness, just how huge this world really is. I mean, just thinking about me as just being a tiny little speck, you know, on that island of Kauai, which is the tiny little speck inside of a giant ocean, right? A vast, you know, almost unfathomably large ocean on a planet inside of a gigantic galaxy leading into who knows what else. And it just really spoke to me. There's something about that feeling that even now I can remember it. It was just a really, really special moment for me in my life. It just really made an impact on me, and hopefully one day I'll be able to get back there again and see it again. But either way, that's something I'm going to take with me forever. Now the funny thing is, while I'm sitting there having, you know, my epiphany, you know, my life-changing moment, I start hearing this noise, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And then I realized I was hearing goats. And then the crazy thing is, you'd look on these giant cliffs that were probably about, like that steep. You'd see those mountain goats, and they'd be walking along, almost laid up against the side, lean up against the side of the mountain, walking across those little cracks just to get at little bushes and things like that to eat. And they're just walking around like it was nothing. They're 3,000 or plus feet from a certain depth, fall into the ocean onto the rocks, and it was just normal for them. So that was kind of funny, just to kind of see how nature works and everything. It just it struck me as kind of humorous. But that was a really awesome trip. We got to see some historical stuff there. Spent a lot of time on all the beaches, driving along the coast. Got to go in a kayak out on the rivers, and just if you've never been to Hawaii, just the culture and the climate and just so much that's available there. It's just really, really awesome. Now for my number 2 adventure, this might sound weird, but I'm gonna have to say that was going back home to Washington, back to my hometown. Now this was another thing that was really impactful to me, because of the circumstances of life and the things that had happened in the Army and everything. It had been really like 8 years or so, I think, since I had lived back on the West Coast, back in Washington. And I hadn't really had opportunity or the funds to go visit either. And in that length of a time, you can really change a lot as a person. Sometimes you don't realize just how much you change. So I think going back home, going back to that small town where I grew up, there were some things that had changed. I mean, the town had grown, roads had changed, new businesses had come in, and but there's a lot of stuff that was still very much the same. But if you ever go back home, it always seems like so much smaller than you remember, right, from when you were a kid. And it just feels different. And it's not really that the place is different, it's that you've changed. Now, one of the really big things for me, again, I grew up in the state of Washington, grew up in the Pacific Northwest, familiar with Washington, familiar with Oregon, had been to Idaho, seen a little bit of California, but I never really appreciated the beauty of all of it. In fact, I never really became a really outdoorsy person until just maybe a handful of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago or so. Now, even in just my small town of Granite Falls, Washington, there are a ton of just amazing hiking trails. And my whole teenage years, growing up there, I never even really went hiking. I wasn't interested in that. I spent my time hanging out at the skate park with my buddies, playing video games, doing all that kind of stuff. I just didn't even really realize what was around me. Now, I actually did a short video series on this trip you can check out on my YouTube channel, where I showed some of the stuff from my hometown and the nature trails and stuff around there. But it was so funny because I was going with my baby sister Katie, and we went on some hikes and everything with her and her husband and her kids, and they must have thought I was just a weirdo, because I'd be walking up to cedar trees, because in Washington you'll see cedar trees that are this big around, and I'm going up to this. I said, look at this, Katie, look at this tree, this thing is huge, isn't this awesome? And she's kind of like, yeah, I guess, But I think sometimes when you grow up, you've got something right in front of your face like that, you don't really get it, you don't really appreciate it. There's people who will spend tons of money to take trips up to Washington. There's people who would just love to move up there just because of so much that's available in the outdoors, whether you like getting out on the water, or hiking, camping, hunting, all that stuff. So for me, it was like I was seeing it through a completely different set of eyes. And now, really, ultimately, that's our goal as a family. One day, one way or another, that's where we're gonna end back up there, Lord willing. That's our plan. That's where, even if it's when we retire, but I'm hoping it's gonna be a lot sooner than that. I'm working towards that. But that's home for us. That's never really changed. And for me, coming back and visiting, it just totally confirmed that. It was something in my heart, something in my spirit, something in my soul almost, where this is where I belong. And it's a crazy thing. I know it's hard to explain for some people. Maybe you have a place where you grew up that you feel connected to like that. But that's the way it is for me. So it's definitely a really awesome trip for me. It really changed my perspective, my outlook on life, my family, a lot of different things. It really kind of caused me to pause and reevaluate my priorities. So it really was like a shift for me, like a life shift kind of trip. So who says going back home can't be one of the biggest adventures of your life? Lastly, I've got to say my absolute number one adventure has been my family. Hands down, bar none, no competition whatsoever. Now, me and my wife, we met when we were very young. We were teenagers. I think I was 15 when we first met, and she was 17, so she was actually an older woman. But we just became really good friends. We were just awesome friends for a couple of years. Went through a lot together, and our relationship, it was kind of like you couldn't really pick a day, you know. I couldn't really define like when exactly we became a couple. It's like almost like our friendship just grew into something more than that. And then one day we realized that, you know, that this is it. We're the ones for each other. We ended up getting married real young. I was 19 years old when we got married. Got pregnant with our son Gabriel, like literally almost immediately. He was born, I swear, like 9 months and a day after our honeymoon. But I remember when he was born just a few days after my 20th birthday in December. And I remember holding him, and he just had this face of like an old man, just such a wise face to him, you know. And and I was so young and so foolish and so dumb. I mean, I thought I had it figured out. I mean, I had some good ideals and some good principles, you know. My parents did what they could to raise me right, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I go back and I look at the pictures now, his baby pictures of me holding him with the scruffy hair and the scruffy beard. I mean, I was a baby, you know. I look back and like, you know, what were we thinking? But I just remember at that moment holding him, and he was a pretty small baby. Small enough I could almost hold him just in one hand, you know, like a loaf of bread. And I remember looking at him, and I just knew that like my life had changed forever, you know. He was so small and so light, but it was the weight of the world in my hands, you know. And I grew up, I sobered up right there, and I realized that, you know, childhood games and all that is over. It's time to be a man. It's time to take responsibility for your family and to do everything you can to care for and protect them. Now, looking back today, my son is 12 years old. I have 2 more daughters that came up behind him, and every decision I've made in my life, you know, it's always come down to trying to do what is best for my family. Don't get me wrong, I haven't always been perfect. I've made mistakes along the way. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. My wife and my kids, they can all tell you about my mistakes and my shortcomings. But once you have a family, especially once you have kids, if there's any advice I could give to anybody, especially if you're starting a family young, is that it's not about you anymore. It's about them. You've got to do what's best for them. At the end of the day, at the end of this life, it's not really going to matter if I achieve the most success at my job or made the most money or any of that. If I get to it and, you know, my family's gone, you know, my family hates my guts. My family doesn't even know who I am. You know, if you lose your family, what is the point? What is the point of any of this? I mean, I could decide today to run away from my family, that I'm going to take whatever money I have and I'm going to, you know, flee the country, and I'm going to go travel the world and explore, and I could do all those things, but it would be meaningless without them. Sure, I love going out and doing solo trips and practicing survival skills and, you know, getting that time to myself. Sometimes I need that, to get out in nature by myself, to recharge, and to come back to be the husband and the father that I need to be. But most of the adventures, I love that I get to share this with my kids. I love that they're starting to take an interest in the things that I'm interested in, and being able to kind of teach them how to start fires and how to go camping and getting them their own hiking gear and going out and doing these trips together. I mean, traveling as a family, going to different state parks, visiting different cities, and just seeing that excitement of discovery in their eyes and remembering what that was like to be young, right? Before we got older and more jaded and more cynical and more particular about things. And we kind of forgot to appreciate the simpler things in life. We actually just got back from a trip this past weekend in Ocean City with our family, and I remember our kids fighting a horseshoe crab on the seashore, which if you've never heard of or seen a horseshoe crab, they're pretty weird. I mean, they get really big. They're kind of like alien, like bizarro looking. And it was just a shell, you know. It wasn't even alive, but my kids were just going bananas over it. So if you think you've got to plan like these crazy, super huge, extravagant vacations with your family for them to have a good time and to appreciate it. You don't. You just gotta spend time with your kids. Show them that you love them, that you appreciate them. Share it with them. Show them that they're not too young to go on an adventure. They're not too young to discover new things. They're not too young to, learn how to survive in the wilderness. Just share it with them, because they're not looking for, your money. They're looking for your time. They're looking for your attention. And that's what's really gonna matter. But I don't look back at the things that my dad bought me and think, okay, I know my dad loved me because he made sure I had good clothes, or he got me the toys I wanted for my birthday. No, it's the experiences, the time we spent together. That's what I remember. And if you have kids, that's what you should desire too, is that one day when you're old and gray, they'll be sitting around telling your grandkids about all the adventures you went on together and all the things you did as a kid, and that'll inspire them to do the same thing for their children. So definitely number one adventure, hands down, is my family. It hasn't been easy. It's been a rough road at times, but I wouldn't change any of it for the world. Now before we close out, last but not least, I have to tag 5 other small outdoor content creators to share their top 5 adventures. Now for any of you guys, if you've already done a video like this and I missed it, or maybe somebody else tagged you I didn't see and you've got one in the works, something like that, feel free to drop the link in the description and let me know so we can hook that all up together. But first off, I would like to tag our friend Nate, the Otter Outdoorsman. Secondly, I want to tag Carly over at the Last Grown Up in the Woods. Third, I want to tag our bushcrafting buddy, the Lone Woodsman. Fourth, I want to tag Touring Taste Buds. And lastly, I'm going to tag our friend Chris over at Hibernia Overland. That's right, Chris. I see you. So if you guys made it all the way to the end of this video, I just want to say thank you. Hopefully you feel like you know me a little bit better, know my family, kind of understand where I'm coming from. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to drop those below. And until next time, stay happy, stay outdoor.